Hello, hello, and welcome to Homeschool Moms Unfiltered. I'm your host, Amanda, and my lovely co host is.
Hello, I'm Meagan.
We are your messy, imperfect, progressive. I feel like that's especially important to clarify these days. Homeschool mom friends. We both love homeschooling. We love being with our kids, but we're never going to show up here pretending that our lives are perfect, Instagram or otherwise.
Exactly. I mean, we've had this phony approach going really my whole adult life, right? I mean, Facebook started in 2005 or whatever, and that was the whole fake book, nickname. And so it's created this whole culture of people who think, oh man, like you're sitting there watching, you're like, this person totally has their shit together. Like something's got to be wrong with me because my life is a disaster. What am I doing wrong, right? And yes, we know logically people can say to you, it's not real, it's etc. But it still has been doing a doozy on so many people's mental health during this whole era of showing the highlight reel on social media. And so we don't do that here, right? We are as real as it gets.
No, it is so true. We actually had the perfect example of that when we were just in Greece last week. We were at this hotel that's got a great view of the Parthenon off in the distance. And we were sitting there having our breakfast, our free breakfast that we got at the hotel. And there was this woman, and they started on the one patio, and then they went down the stairs and they did more filming. And she had her glass of champagne she was carrying around, and it was breakfast. Like she wasn't drinking it, but they were like all of these different poses. And my kiddo was like, what is going on here? And I'm like, well, let me explain to you what an influencer is and what is happening. And we had a really long talk about the fact that it used to be with social media you saw like the highlight reels and you had to remember like, look, people are only showing you the best moments. And now it has evolved to the point where it's not even the real moments a lot of times.
Staged.
It's so staged and so scripted. And it's really, I mean, even when you know, it's hard to always remember, right?
Yeah. I mean, even when you're watching something and you're like, who filmed that? Right. I mean, like it's so you're like, hold on a second, this has to be staged because nobody would have just accidentally caught that on somebody intentionally set that up and filmed that. Right. So yeah, but it's hard. It can do a doozy on you. Right.
Yeah.
And speaking of doing a doozy on you, today we're talking about self-care, which is a topic that I kind of loathe talking about, mainly just because it makes me feel like, oh, great. Here we go again. Self-care. We're going to talk about how I suck at self-care. Great. Let's do it. Right. But specifically, we're kind of noticing that we are not alone in this phenomenon of homeschooling hormonal pubescent kids while we are on our own hormonal roller coaster, be it perimenopause, postmenopause, etc. And so all of that coming together in one household while attempting to homeschool can make for some fun. So let's talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not exactly our normal topic, but I think it'll be a good one. Hopefully it'll open a lot of conversations. Yeah.
I think so. But since we do keep it real here, we always start with kind of a recap of our weeks, the good, the bad, the ugly, everything in between. So how's your week been, Amanda?
Our week has been good. I mentioned we did go to Greece last week. And so we were in Athens doing some world schooling and learning about history, there real time. And that was good. It was really hard. It really kicked my butt and I'm still recovering. And we talked about that before on the show, that those kind of big days take a lot out of me and big trips really take a lot. We're back in Italy now and it's going okay. I'm tired of cooking every freaking meal. I'm solo parenting, right? My husband is back in the States and the kiddo and I are traveling on our own. So I have every meal and there's not a toaster oven here and the gas stove is a little finicky. So kiddo can't really cook on it. I'm cooking every meal. I'm so over this. So I need to be done, but it's okay. Yeah. I had another giant spider on my computer right as I sat down to record. So I relocated him and then had my freak out. I'm not a fan of spiders. And he was another one. He was big and he was one of those jumping spiders I mentioned. I'm not a fan of the jumping spiders or the stink bugs. Well, a lot of stink bugs, but anyway, it's good. It's fine. Silver lining, Amanda. It's fine. It's good.
And I think that's the world schooling thing, right? People show the highlight reel even of world schooling. And like, I was talking to my husband because I'm solo world schooling and my husband is back working and doing his thing and all that. And I talked to him one day about the number of things that we have lost. I have 3 teenagers and they're not even being reckless, but it's just like a lot of times we're staying in really small spaces because it's less expensive to travel that way, or that's just what's available. And so like a couple of weeks ago, I had to go get my 17-year-old a new pair of flip flops because at one point he was sleeping on a sofa bed somewhere that we were staying and they had gotten scooched under and we didn't fold the bed back in before we left. It was a hotel, so we didn't need to. And I'm like, oh, there goes a pair of flip flops, right? Oh, I left my phone charger on a bus. And it's not that they're being reckless. It's because I've lost things too, but it's just when you're making these moves and sometimes you're moving in a hurry because, a timetable changes or something unexpected happens. And then you pack really quickly and you're like, oh crap, I totally forgot to grab that out of the bathroom or whatever. So yeah, I mean, it's like world schooling is amazing, but then there's also like those little things too.
Yeah, no, that's it. They're like, it is. And if you go to my Instagram, you are 100% going to see pretty picturesque pictures of the countryside of Italy. And soon I'm going to post some Greece pictures and some of the island tour that we went to. And they're going to look amazing. And there will not be a video. Pictures. There will not be a video of the jumping spiders, but that's mainly because I was freaking out and then trying to figure out how to get it out of our home without, just, like, so.
Reality.
Mm-hmm. So how is everything else in your world? You're in a new place?
Good. We are in a new place. So I mentioned last week that we moved into our apartment in Portugal. For those who are new, we are fleeing the US, which was planned even before the election. Even if Kamala had won, half the country still thinks that immigrants eat dogs. And I was done. I was burnt out and I was done, so I couldn't do it anymore. So we decided to go to Europe and we got a small apartment in Europe, super low key, super low maintenance. I'm loving the lightness of all of it, shedding all the things. And it's wonderful. But our visas haven't come through yet. So we can only be in Portugal for so long until that happens. So we've come to the UK and reality, because we're paying rent in Portugal, I cannot also be like, oh, I'm going to rent whatever. The UK is expensive as fuck. So there's no way I could be paying like accommodation in both places. And so we are pet sitting. I've mentioned before that we pet sit through Trusted House Sitters. I'll link it. It's amazing. If you're looking for a budget-friendly way to see the world, we are 2 train stops outside of London, staying in a really beautiful family home. The family is so sweet, and we're watching their Bernedoodle. Ironically, my 13-year-old has a Bernedoodle who's a service dog, and they knew that. They were okay with her being here. And so we are slightly delayed, actually, in starting our recording today because there was like a Bernedoodle WrestleMania World War happening, all friendly. They were having a blast, right? It was pretty big, right? And they're both in here now. They were removed from the room and now they're back. So I can't say that we're not going to have some choppy edits if WrestleMania kicks off again. But yeah, so we're here for 2 weeks. We have another 3-week pet sitting gig later in end of February. And then we'll be good to go back to Portugal. We'll have run out our clock of days and the whole dance of that happening. So yeah, so we're good. I mean, we're just kind of laying low. One of my goals for this year was to pick up embroidery. And so I've started that while we've been here. There's a new OJ true crime thing on Netflix that I've been watching. I'm not sure if it's on Netflix everywhere, but here in Europe it is. My daughter was like, what happened with the, I'm like, I know, but I'm going to watch it anyway. This is true. I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to watch it. Oh. So yeah, we've just been kind of like having a little down period, which after having moved and packed and all that has been a really nice shift, like a daily nap. Sign me up. I'm good. So we're doing good.
Yeah, no, that has been the best part of this current trip for us. Like we have a few random trips here and there, San Marino and Greece, and we're going to Cyprus next week. And those are kind of all in and full on. But when we're just in the countryside, like we don't even have a car to be able to get into town. So we're just really taking it easy. And it's such a nice change of pace. But that actually kind of ties in perfectly with what we're going to talk about today, right? So when we look at our stats, one thing has become fairly clear. More than 60% of our listeners are somewhere between the early stages of what in the world is going on with my body, perimenopause, and the I haven't had a period in more than a year, so why in the hell am I still having hot flashes post-menopause phase, right? And if you don't fall in that range, either you did at some point, you will eventually, or you know and care about someone who will fall in that range. So let's get real about it, right? What is menopause? How do we navigate it while homeschooling kids who are going through their own huge hormonal transitions as well? So I was thinking if we're going to have this conversation, we should first get all on the same page. So we're going to have a real quick little like perimenopause, menopause 101. So perimenopause is when your reproductive hormones first start to decrease. We aren't generally taught what this looks like really much at all, right? So most of us overlook the early stages. It likely starts in your late 30s or your late 30s or early 40s. And a shorter menstrual cycle is a common first symptom. Not everyone gets it, but it's fairly common. Like maybe you were always a regular 30 or 31 days, and now suddenly it's every 25 days. That's early perimenopause.
Oh, joy.
Yeah, right. Oh, fantastic. And then a lot of times your period gets longer. So it's like every 25 days, but instead of being like a 5-day cycle, it's now like 7 to 9 days, and it's coming every 24 days. And what is this nonsense? Okay, so in late perimenopause, you're more likely to have longer cycles or the occasional random missed period, right? So you might have just where you just don't ovulate one of your normal times. And that might push your cycle out to half of like 1.5 times or maybe 2 times what it normally is, just kind of depends. And then fun, you get irregular spotting throughout your cycle, right? This is one of those symptoms that happens throughout all perimenopause. So you've got that to look forward to if you're not there yet. And if you're there, you're like, yeah, what the hell is that about? Perimenopause can and often does last for years, in some cases, up to 10 years. Seriously, that's totally going to be my luck. I just know it. I seem the worst luck when it comes to health stuff. Okay, so menopause is actually a single date in time. And I think that's one of the things that trips up a lot of people. It is the day that you have officially gone 12 consecutive months without a period. Before that day, you're in perimenopause. And after that day, you are considered postmenopausal. Okay, everyone still with me? I know you're just listening, so you can't really tell me, but hopefully we're all on the same page. We're doing well here. Okay, so for years, treatment options were limited, care was limited, resources were limited. Women's health in general just didn't get much attention or money, right? We were not taught much about it, except that you go through it, it's inevitable, and you are expected to grin and bear it. But really, it's kind of huge. It's pretty big deal. It's like reverse puberty. And we all know that puberty was no joke. I know I certainly don't want to relive those years. I can't imagine anyone listening to it was like, oh, puberty was great. I wanted to those years again. Like, so I don't really understand why we as women are often quick to downplay the entire menopausal transition period, or why we allow it to be downplayed around us, even when we're slogging through it and we know how it can totally be just completely disruptive to our lives.
Mhm. I was thinking when you were saying that, we think about the fact that our kids are going through puberty and we're like, oh, yeah, their hormones are crazy, right? Like they just it kind of gets discussed that way. But as we've been reading in our book club on Thursdays, we've been reading this book called The New Menopause, and it talks about basically every single system in your body that is impacted by our declining estrogen during menopause. And so it's like, if you think about that from the perspective of your kids too, I would love the new puberty book where somebody breaks down for me exactly what's happening for my kids too, because we've always just been told like, oh, their hormones go haywire and they act out of body. Okay, great. But like if menopause is this complex and every single system of our body is impacted by it, specifically, that's probably happening to our kids at the same time. And so we're haywire, they're haywire. And it's like, we're all coming together trying to figure out how to do algebra. And it's like, holy crap, right? Like situation.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, on the bright side, menopausal care, starting with perimenopause, is having a moment. I mean, you can't scroll social media without seeing, supplements and an influencer talking about this and that and the other thing, right? So celebrities are talking about menopause, which has been great. Courtney Cox just redid that tampon ad. Have you seen it? She was
Oh
known
no.
for doing. Oh, I'll have to find it. I'll share it in our Facebook group or something. She did some Tampax ad like back in the day where she was like in the locker room at the gym putting leg warmers on. And she's talking about like, does your period, blah, blah, blah. And so now she's redone it, but it's like, are you blah, blah, blah. So this is menopause. Maybe like, yes, we're talking about it more, which is great. But some of the difficulty is that there's like supplements being pushed all over the place. I mean, everybody has some sort of solution or cure for your menopausal issues. And so that part can get a little bit tricky too, is trying to figure out what on earth to do because it's not very well studied, as you said, Amanda, right? I mean, we only make up half of the population. So like no one's really bothered because why would they? Who cares, right? So I mean, I myself, so I have 3 teenagers. My kids are 17, 15, and 13. They are in the thick of puberty. Well, I am, I think, in the thick of perimenopause. I mean, we've talked about the fact that there isn't a huge test, like a definitive test that labels you for this. But yes, I've got the longer periods and the this and the that. And I don't know if the brain fog is just me or if that's brain fog. I'm not really but all of that is there, right? And then add to the fact that I live in a wildly neurodivergent household, and neurodivergent folks tend to have really impactful shifts when it comes to puberty. And so I would assume that it is the same for menopause as well. It's just a bit more oomph behind the whole thing sometimes than it is for many neurotypical folks. Not all, because there's other things that would cause neurotypical folks to also have an oomph experience. But it's been a journey. I'll say that much, right? It's been interesting. So now I will say, I've said this before, and I will say this again. I love parenting teenagers. This is not going to be one of those chats that's like teenagers. Okay. There's a dog tail flapping in front of my camera, and you're watching that video. That's Barney, who we're pet sitting. He's an 80-pound Bernedoodle. And so when he walks by, his tail is, hi, Barney. His tail is big enough that, yeah, welcome to the podcast, Barney. Hi. Hi. Yep. So
If you're not watching the podcast, Meagan is currently getting all of the kisses from Barney.
yes, he's a very sweet boy. Okay, so this is not one of those teenagers are awful, all of that, right? My teens are moody assholes. It's not that conversation, right? My teens are neither of those things, right? They're not assholes and they're not more moody than any other human being. I mean, every human being has moods and they're allowed to have them too. Isn't that amazing?
Go figure.
But, right, exactly. Go figure. Treating your kids like humans, what a shock, right? So yeah, this definitely isn't one of those like my teens are moody asshole conversations, but they are going through this epic life change. They're super confused about a lot of things. They're trying to find their footing, their style, how they present themselves to the world. They're getting hairier by the day. They sleep and eat a shit ton. Like it's unbelievable. One of my kids slept like 14 hours the other day. I was like, holy cow. But they're awesome. And I love doing life with them.
I was just saying, someone in our group, in our Facebook group, just asked the question like, oh, what are your tween boys doing for hobbies that aren't screen time hobbies? And of course I answered with real things, but I also put in there eating because I am positive that's hobby at school. Like it happens more than anything else. I don't understand. I don't like a hollow leg. I don't know. Maybe a leg.
We went the other day. Okay, so I was teaching the other day and I was teaching till like 9:30 and the kids wanted to go grab some dinner. And we were still in central London at the time before we had come to our pet sit. And there's a Nando's around the corner, which is like, I was going to say Pollo Tropical, but like that's a South Florida thing. Like not everybody around the country knows those, but it's like, it's fusion. I think it's Brazilian, South African food and it's chicken and it's amazing. They have this famous like peri peri sauce, whatever. So anyway, my kids love it. And there's a handful of them in the US. If you're in the US, Google it, see if there's one near you. If you are, go. It's amazing. So anyway, the kids had said, okay, fine. If you're teaching till 9:30, we're going to go at like 10 after 9. We'll get there. We'll order the food. And then it was 2-minute walk. So they're like, as soon as you're done teaching, just zip over and you can come have dinner with us. I'm like, okay, no problem. I get there. The food came within a few minutes of me getting there. And my oldest kid, who's 17, had ordered himself a sharing platter, except he never shares. One for two. And we'll polish it off. I mean, Oh my gosh. So I was at the supermarket the other day and they had this slab of ribs that was huge. And it's like servings for two. And I'm like, no, it's not. This serving for one. And then he's still going to be hungry. Right. So yeah, I totally
Yep.
get that. Right. Now, I would love to eat that way. Alas, perimenopause and puberty are very different. In that regard, yes. Holy cow, yes. Wouldn't that be nice? So eating like a horse has not been one of my perimenopause activities. My period has been completely screwed up for like 3 to 4 years now, like you insinuated earlier, right? They are the period, the time frame in between is shorter and they last longer. Fun. And then somewhere in the middle, there's like this 2 day period of my period where it's like the bleeding like a dying animal phase, where like I'm not sure how I'm still alive or I haven't needed a blood transfusion. And so at one point I went to the gynecologist and I was like, something is very wrong here. And she scanned and, looked at my ovaries and did all this kind of stuff. And she was like, it was basically like, you're getting older. You can expect more changes like this. And then sent me on my way. And I was like, oh, this is fun, good times. So about 6 months ago, though, I did fall for one of the internet, you know, sponsored ads, right? So there's this one company in the States called Winona, and you fill out a questionnaire online. It gets reviewed by a doctor, and then they mail you different supplements that you could take and things like that. So they sent me DHEA, which is mentioned in the book, estrogen, and I forget what the other one was. I do not recall, but they do not do testosterone. There was one that I was looking at called Joy Wellness. I think it's JOI. And you go and get a blood test, and then it gets reviewed by a doctor, and they send you injections that you do, which I'm like, I don't think I could do. I can't even. I know people that have done fertility treatments. You've done this and you're amazing at it. And I know if I had that experience, I'd have to suck it up and do it. But the thought of stabbing myself, I'm not sure I could actually do it. So I will say, sorry,
And I just have to say, as someone who did go through IVF, I can't imagine like there's a lot of trauma wrapped up in that like whole process, especially for us, right? Because it was unsuccessful. Like I can't imagine being like, oh, now that I'm in menopause and or perimenopause and I'm definitely not having more kids, like let's start injections again. Like that won't be traumatic.
right. Yeah, I can't even imagine. That would be like, oh. So I thought about doing it because they do testosterone, but you have to go and get a blood test to get started. And all of that scared me. And so I never went that route. But I will say my biggest reason for trying it was that my pelvic floor has essentially turned into tissue paper at this point, and I was just desperate for a solution. So now that we aren't in the US, I don't have that option anymore. So I need to establish with a doctor now that we've moved and blah, 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 and see what I can do. But yeah, in the meantime, though, I will say I've discovered this woman online. I'll put the link in the show notes too, but she goes by the Vagina Coach. And she has this program called the Buff Muff. And it is all pelvic floor strengthening exercises. She's like her background is like physio and stuff like that, but she has specialized in pelvic health, and that's been her whole jam. And so even just like the postural alignment cues that she gives have already been super helpful in so many ways. So she does coaching calls with her group members and stuff like that. And we're not sponsored by her or anything. I'm like legitimately a member of this group. And so if you're looking for a resource, if your pelvic floor is like tissue paper, go check it out. It's been pretty cool. So
Well, yeah, a random thing that most people don't talk about, and again, because I went through fertility things and I have all these other health things, so I have to track a lot of things. I started noticing early in perimenopause that I have a lot more pelvic floor issues after ovulation, closer to when my period's going to start. And if you go on Google, you find like, yeah, this is a thing.
Yep.
Then you find like, but we don't really have much for you. It's a thing. Women, especially women who have had babies, they have this problem, and it does definitely get worse after you ovulate. Like it's a thing.
like, I mean, it's at least validating to know that it's not just you, right? But yeah, I had read that because I would definitely have like more pelvic floor issues around ovulation. And it was like, oh yeah, because there's a softening of the muscles for ovulation and blah, blah, blah. And I was like,
Yeah, and increased progesterone in your body causes like the muscles to be more active, which can force more out. And like there's all this stuff about like, oh, what exercises to do at different times of your cycle and things like that. Like, okay, but can we get like some solutions beyond just, hey, you might pee yourself all the time. Hey, no problem, right? Like,
That
what's
was
happening? Get in here.
I know. And it's so funny, like no one talks about it because
Mhm.
I finally then I like sent a text message to this group of girlfriends that I have one time and I was like, I don't know what's happening, like all this kind of stuff, because I'm always convinced that it's terrible and I'm dying and
Mhm.
you know, all this stuff. And I really don't Google a lot for that reason because if you Google death will always be one of the things that it just you remember, like I have a paper cut, you might die. And I'd be like, that's it. I'm gonna be dead by dinner. So I can't do those things. But it was so funny because I have a girlfriend who also has 3 kids and she had her kids fairly close together. And she was like, "Oh, I can't make it through a Zumba class." Like she goes like at 20, she said the class is 50 minutes and at like 25 to 27 minutes, I just have to excuse myself and go to the bathroom before I come back and finish Zumba class. And I'm like, okay, but here's the deal. Like, why no one ever like why do you I mean, I guess it's random to just be like at a girls' night and be like, by the way, sometimes I pee myself in Zumba class, right? But like at the same time, by not talking about it, then everybody else thinks it's just that. And so then
Yeah.
you're like, oh my gosh, there's something seriously wrong with me. No, it's not. 3 human heads and sets of shoulders have torn apart my body, and now it's hormonal and everything else. Like it just is what it is, right?
Yep.
So buff muff.
Yeah.
No,
No, that's, I mean, but it is that thing, right? And we kind of talked about this in the book club with the new menopause book. Like, it's, no one really wants to talk about it, but there's so little information out there about these things for women. Yet men, as they get older and their testosterone dips, they have erectile dysfunction and there are commercials everywhere for solutions for that. But for women, it's like, oh, well, this is, like just stay quiet about all of the things that happen when your estrogen dips. But like, I have like, oh, it's a soapbox I could get on. I will get off of it. I will step down and I will continue with this particular podcast. Okay. So I know, like you're saying, for me personally, my periods were getting shorter for probably like 3, 4 years now. And I was definitely enjoying the spotting, or as they sometimes call it, breakthrough bleeding, like just all the freaking time, right? Like you just never, like, what is happening? Like, why? Thankfully, it's settled down. I think I'm far enough into this perimenopause thing that I don't have nearly as much of it. But I went to my doctor, and I will say my primary physician is generally a great doctor, right? She has to manage a very complicated set of medical issues. I have a ton of specialists. She's on top of all of the tests that they run and looking at what this means and how we're going to handle this and what that means for this doctor and all of that. Like, generally, she's really great. She 100% blew me off when I went in about like the breakthrough bleeding and, my periods getting shorter and all of this. And she said, oh, it's not perimenopause. And I was like, I think it is, like, no. And then she wanted me to go for all these extra tests to figure out what was wrong and if it was fibroids or this or that. And I mean, we had done fertility treatments all the way through IVF. So like I know my insides pretty intimately, right? And there might be something new, but I really doubt that we made it all the way through IVF and no one picked up on these kinds of things. I mean, we did lots of pictures of my insides. So off to Google. And I have to say, I did not find much at this time anyway. Maybe it's different now because it's a few years past that point. But there was not much about this idea that shortened periods are the beginning of perimenopause. But much like Meagan, I went to a group of girlfriends and they were all like, totally first stage of perimenopause. Don't sweat it. Super common. One of my friends was like, oh, mine comes every 21 days and it lasts 9 to 10 days. Like the actual period lasts 9 to 10 days. And then every 21 days it happens. And I'm like, that's awful. What is that? Like, it's so unfair. Like, but yeah, totally a thing. So now for me in the last year, I have missed 2 periods. They've been spread out. And it's where I just didn't ovulate one month. Things always return to normal afterwards. So I'm not going to lie, I really do not mind having my period only every 50 to 55 days, especially now that I'm not trying to procreate anymore. They say, right, the research or whatever says, generally speaking, once you've gone 60 days without a period, you're likely to hit menopause within 2 years. I guess I haven't actually gone 60 days, so I'm not quite there yet, but I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. Maybe soon. At this point, I'm really not sad about soon being soon, right?
not only have I not gone 60 days, but then one month I had 2 periods in one month. And I went and I called and the doctor was like, yeah, totally normal. It's part of it. And I was like, girl, I'm going the opposite route. I'm getting more, not less. Stop it.
But I had that too. I had like 1 month where it didn't, and then another month where it came like 12 days later. I was like, oh, what is this? Like, no, just no.
My body's just like shooting eggs out, like think, like one of those t-shirt guns and like a basketball game. Like, stop.
Ouch. Right. All right. So I will say before we talk about anything else of the self-care part of it and all of that we're going to get into, my biggest piece of advice around all of this is that if it is bothering you, and even if it isn't, but you want to be proactive with your healthcare as you hit your 40s, like it is so important to actually search for a specific menopause certified doctor. Like your primary care physician, even the OBGYN who brought your babies into the world, likely isn't going to know very much about how to help you with perimenopause symptoms using like the most current research. So just take the time. It's really easy to find. There's like the Menopause Society and a few other resources online. It's not that hard to find doctors now who are very clear about the fact that they are certified in menopausal care. Like just do it. Like I know so many friends. I have so many friends, right? Who are like, oh, my doctor said that they knew what they were doing. And so I made this appointment and it went nowhere. They weren't helpful. I felt completely dismissed. Like, we don't need that. We have enough going on in our lives. We do not need medical appointments like that. I know I personally am not at the point where I'm looking for pharmacological solutions for perimenopause symptoms. But I will say that we recently did this whole book club series on the new menopause book. And the author did a great job of breaking down menopausal hormone therapy options. So if you're interested in doing any kind of hormone replacement therapy, whether it's patches or rings or, lotions and or supplements, all of those kinds of things, she breaks it all down. She does the options, the research behind the various options. So I would totally recommend listening at least to the first book club episode. And maybe even picking up the whole book just to keep and have on hand because she really does cover a lot of stuff that is one of those things like why do we not learn this? Like why do we not learn the actual stuff? Why is no one sharing this with us? It's kind of our bodies and we have to go through it. So
and then figure it all out on our own on top of it, right? Through
yeah.
Facebook groups and girlfriends. Yeah, like good times, right? I'll link the new menopause book down below because I think for me, one of the biggest things that was in the book that was super helpful was she does give the hormonal therapy treatments, but also breaks down that scary study about, hormone replacement therapy causes cancer. And she talks about like where that comes from and the flaws in the study and things like that, and what we know now versus what we knew then, and et cetera, et cetera. So for that alone, it was worth every cent to just know what was what. So
yeah, for sure. I totally agree with that because I had heard that. I mean, I think we've all heard that, right? And I think all of our moms probably didn't get the treatment that they should have because of how poorly that was covered and reported a couple decades ago.
That's so true. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. So we have more hormonal discussion coming up. But first, we want to just do a huge thank you shout out to our sponsor. Our premier sponsor for our podcast is Hub of Curiosity. They offer classes on OutSchool that are top rated and super popular. OutSchool can be pretty spendy. We are OutSchool moms. We totally get that. Sometimes I have a little bit of like, when I look at price tags because it's a marketplace. And so you're going to get a huge wide variety of everything on there. Hub of Curiosity is a specific provider on OutSchool, and they've revamped all of their group and self-paced classes so that they are never more than $12 a class. You don't need a coupon code. It's not like an introductory price where it's a dollar this week and then it goes to $27 the next week. They do offer coupon codes sometimes, but still, even if it reverts back to the regular price, it's never more than $12, which is super nice. They have over 700 five-star reviews on their, so you'll find everything over there from multi-sensory multiplication and spelling. If you're at home homeschooling and banging your head against the wall trying like they just can't figure out the times tables, outsource it, right? You could totally do that. It's amazing. They have engineering classes where you can learn every moving part that exists in a car. There's something for everyone over at Hub of Curiosity. So we'll put a link in the description. We're going to put a link in the show notes below that if you're brand new to OutSchool, click on that link. It'll give you a $20 coupon that you can apply to your first class, whether it's a Hub of Curiosity class or another class. And if you have any questions on how OutSchool works, it could be a little overwhelming. There's plenty of people who land there and they're like, what is this thing? Is it a full school? Is it, how does it work? What am I doing? So come to our private Facebook group, leave us a comment on the podcast, send us a DM, whatever. We'll be happy to help you figure it out because it really is a great resource. But like anything else, you have to know how to use it and how to leverage it and stuff like that. So happy to help if you'd like. So back to menopause.
Yeah. Back to menopause, the fun stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. So I think as homeschool parents, it's really easy to end up living for your kids, right? I think all caregivers fall into this category of, like sometimes you end up kind of living for your kids. But if you're homeschooling, right, so much of your day, so much of your week, so much of your life is for your kids. But what are you doing for yourself these days, especially if you are one of these 60+% of the women listening to this podcast who are in this menopausal transition? Like, I have to say, I really struggle with this. For me, I feel like it's especially challenging given my chronic health issues. Like, I can't commit to working a regular job, even a part-time job with set hours, and you have to be here for this and you have to show up for that. That's just not something that I can physically do or mentally do a lot of times because my brain fog and my ability to recall important things and stuff like that is really hit or miss. And I feel like Americans especially are just like really raised. You're supposed to get personal fulfillment from your work,
Oh, yeah.
whether that's a job that you're really good at, right? Or being an entrepreneur, that's a really big thing. And especially in homeschool circles, like you're supposed to be an entrepreneur. There's this pressure if you're a stay-at-home mom that you're supposed to have like some successful side hustles. Your kids are supposed to be, they're supposed to have their businesses. And of course, a lot of that falls on the mom to help with transporting and getting the supplies and making sure everything is done legit and all of that jazz. I just can't do a lot of those things. I can't put my energy there. I personally, yeah.
Sorry, I was just going to say, because you said like, if you're a homeschooler, you're supposed to be an entrepreneur. Totally tongue in cheek. If you're new to us and you haven't gotten our personalities yet, if you're brand new and this is your first episode, that was loaded with sarcasm that you just might not have picked up on if you're new to us. So
yeah, that's 100% true. I feel like that, right? Like it's not. It's one of those many pressure things, right? That's out there on social media and you see these people in groups and you're like, "Well, I'm not doing that. My kid's not doing my kid has no interest. I have no interest. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time." So, yeah.
You do not need to start a business if you don't. But a lot of homeschool parents end up in the side hustle gym because, especially in the US, that's the only way they can afford to homeschool because it's so hard to live in this country on a single income and still be able to provide for your kids sometimes the extras. Like, let's even say that on your single income, you can cover the mortgage and whatever else, right? But your kid wants to play t-ball or your kid wants to take, ice skating lessons or whatever. That's the side hustle thing becomes huge because sometimes that's the only way to make it happen.
Yeah, it's true. All of those extracurriculars, especially sports, damn, they're freaking expensive.
Yep.
Okay, so I know because I can't do like a regular job, I was volunteering a lot. And I will say that for a while, it felt good to feel like I was doing something that was objectively useful, right? But I don't know if anyone else is struggling with this. I feel like people just are not kind anymore. And I feel like it's getting worse. Like customer service type jobs and just stuff, volunteering, any of that, it's extra hard these days. Like people are trolls on the internet and then they don't forget that they shouldn't be trolls in real life. I just, it's not fun to be giving 20 plus hours of your time each week for free, only to have people constantly complaining about this or that. Or in my case, I had people accusing me of skimming money to pay for my travel, like my world schooling. Like I even had access to the money, which I don't, like it's like it's hard. And at that point, like well, I'm not really sure I can call this self-care anymore because it
Right.
causes so much more stress and anxiety and, like, okay, well, that's not, it started out, it felt really good, but I'm definitely stepping back from it because it's just, yeah, it's more stress than filling me up kind of thing. Now that said, I do travel. I travel a lot, both short trips and long trips, and I do travel for me. That's one of those things that really is really important to me. And my kiddo is a great travel partner. I'm going to put that out there. My favorite travel buddy, great, great, great travel partner, carries their own bag, is great at getting through security pretty much on their own and all of those kinds of things. But it is still a lot to travel solo with a kid, especially internationally, especially before they're kind of like a teenager. I mean, at this point, kiddo is newly 11 and it is getting easier. Each year it is getting easier, but it's still a lot. I guess something else I do for myself, like when I'm at home, I try to have a weekly coffee date or lunch date with a friend, and that always fills me up and makes me feel good. But, I mean, once a week, like it's good, but it's hard to manage. And we both have kids. And so things get canceled all the time because one is sick or a meeting came up or something they have to get, like it's like, and again, the priority is for the kids, for all of us, like something came up with the kids. So I have to do that for the kid. And that means that I don't get the coffee date for myself that I really needed or the chance to have that connection with the friend.
Huh?
Another thing for me, for better or worse, is that my husband works really long hours. So most evenings, I do get from probably about 7:30 p.m. on as me time. That doesn't happen when we're traveling. Like right now, I'm on until I can finally get the kiddo to go to sleep by like 11 p.m. Please, for the love of God, go to sleep. Sometimes I watch TV, right? You do that, like you binge a series or something good on Netflix, and it's like, oh, I want to watch this new mini series or whatever. But I do a lot of my podcast related work at that time, right? Because I've been on all day managing all of the things for everyone in the family. And so when it's my me time, it's like, oh, no, I have to, read this for book club. I've got to make notes. I need to do some research on this thing that we're going to talk about this week. I try to make sure I get the pleasure reading in. I really do enjoy reading a lot. And it's real pleasure reading. I'm a big smut fan. Even that, like making sure that that happens, it's hard, because you do all of the other things that you have to do. And then it's like almost time for bed. And you're like, oh, but I really wanted, like I left off in a great spot on the book and I really want to read another chapter. But then, you fall asleep halfway through the chapter, or the next day, maybe you finish the chapter, but the next day you're like, I got to reread that chapter because I don't actually remember what happened. Right. Like it's hard. Right. Like, where do you find the time? How do you make it happen? I don't know, like, and I think for me these days, between my chronic fatigue and long COVID and all of the issues that I have with those things, and then the random perimenopause symptoms and the rage days and the worst PMS days and the terrible first 3 days of my period each month, like, I don't know, like by most days, I'm done by 5 p.m., right? But I'm the mom and the wife, so I don't get to be done by 5 p.m.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. And I guarantee you're not alone. There's so many people listening to this that are like, I have no solution. But yeah,
Yeah.
I know what you mean. I mean, I dread conversations about self-care, like anytime it comes up, because I'm like, great, here's just an opportunity for me to feel terrible because I suck at self-care. But I don't even know. I genuinely think like it'll be interesting. I am not at all wishing for the day that my kids leave the house and I don't have them home anymore. But it's interesting because I have a feeling I'm still going to suck at self-care even then. Like, I think I'm just one of those people that like puts it like I will always find something else to do first. So, but obviously having three teenagers at home and unschooling, which I think lends itself. I've talked about this with other unschoolers because there's no timetable for that. Like you, Amanda, you have like a rule in your household, right? That like school ends by 1, right? Like everything has to be done by 1. And at that point, if kiddo's still working on something, he's kind of independent working at that point.
Yeah, that's it. School doesn't have to be done by 1, but he definitely needs to arrange his schedule so the things that he doesn't need me for happen after 1, because I'm done schooling at 1. Like,
Right.
yeah, I'm done helping.
Exactly. That's what I meant. I just explained it poorly. Yeah. So, because I know he's reading and exploring and creating and doing all kinds of stuff all day long. And so I think the setup of unschooling lends itself so differently because it's a 24/7 thing. You'll see conversations in groups where it's like, should I count today as a school day? This is what we did, blah, blah, blah. Every day is a school day in the world of unschooling because you're learning from the moment you get up to the moment you go to bed. They have, I mean, my kids sign up for stuff at really wacky times of day. My boys play a lot of card games. They'll play in tournaments that run overnight, depending on what time zone we're in. My daughter signs up for conferences and seminars and webinars that take place at all. I mean, she'll be like, oh, I'm taking a class with this lady in Australia. And so they're all over the place and they're largely independent with a lot of that stuff. You're still kind of like keeping tabs on everything that's going on. There's not like a shut off point at, at any point, which I know, even though you say you're done by 1, you're still not shut off. Like you're still,
Yeah.
you're still keeping a pulse on everything. It's just lighter, right? Like there's still not, it's not like come 1 o'clock, you're like, and now for my 2-hour meditative session.
Oh, right. I wish. No, I mean, and that's it. I do feel like in some ways that's the real struggle, right? Because it's like up until 1 o'clock, I'll help you with any curriculum. And then after 1 o'clock, you help with anything else that they want to do or explore or learn. But I'm like, I can't keep fighting the curriculum after 1 o'clock. Like my brain is curriculum done by 1 o'clock on most days. Yeah. Hard.
But then it's all the interests and what ifs and can we look into that and can we explore this and can we go here and can we check this out and all of that. And it's
the would you rather. We're in a world of would you rather right now, and they're all like really deep things. And then you have to have these long conversations about, like, would you rather have to have lunch with Elon Musk or Donald Trump, and why? And I'm like, well, neither. And he's like, it doesn't work. You have to think about it and give one. Yeah. I'm like, like, I don't, my brain hurts. I'm tired. Like, I don't know. No.
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. I feel like they always talk about how unhealthy Trump is because he eats so many burgers and stuff like that, like in like fast food and whatever. So like maybe I'd pick him because like you have like a 1 in a billion shot that he just like drops dead during lunch. Then you'd be the person that was there to see it. I don't know. It's my only logic there. But the rest, I don't think I could listen to his voice and eat at the same time. Anyway.
Yeah. But Elon Musk is such a terrible, Trump is a bad person, but he's a bully and he's driven by money. And for the most part, you know what you're getting, right? Like, he's easily swayed and this and that. Like Elon Musk is just a messed up, bad person.
Yeah.
And so I think I couldn't handle that because I wouldn't really know what I was getting, or if like he would suddenly become like a hardcore Nazi mid-meal, or, like with Trump, I just know he's just going to be a bully. And, anyway, we got way off topic. Self-care.
That'll be a blooper. Like, what would you rather? Let's ask, right? That'll be good. We're not totally posting it. Let's see what people come up with. And tell us your reasoning why.
Yeah, that's it. You have to give a reason why. Like the reason is what really matters there.
Amanda can report back to her kiddo. He'll be thrilled for all that data. It'll be great.
So true.
So it's just hard, right? I will just like go until I just collapse into a comatose state of napping and then repeat the process all over again. And I have had phases in life where I've done better with self-care. We had like this amazing yoga instructor in North Carolina and our Y was great. And so I used to love being able to go there. Liam, who's my 13-year-old, at the time he was younger, could go to, they called it Child Watch, but it was great in Child Watch. It wasn't like sometimes like normal gym setup babysitting is pretty torturous. They had pool days and they would go to the playground and they played games. Like they had all sorts of really cool stuff. He learned like heads up, thumbs up, which I never would have thought to teach my kids, but we totally played that in school. Like they would learn stuff like that in there. And my oldest was old enough to go do his own thing and Astrid would come to yoga with me. So it felt like I was getting my time, but everybody else was covered. It wasn't like at the expense of them also being good. So I was okay with that. I did joke that I was taking up, not joke, but I did say that I was taking up embroidery this year. And we're off to a good start. Yesterday, I embroidered while I watched the first episode of the OJ crime series. So I was good on that. But I think, part of it is like I've lived for almost 44 years now in this like go until you crash and burn and fall asleep. And so when I do sit down to do a quiet activity, I'm like, oh, I could nap, right? Like, because it's that thing where like, as soon as you stop moving at warp speed and functioning at that level, that your body goes into like this shutdown mode. And I think part of that is generational, right? I mean, our worth was based, like you mentioned before, about like receiving satisfaction from your job in the United States culture. Our worth was based on productivity and accomplishments. I mean, there's jokes on, Instagram and stuff like that all the time about the pathway from gifted, undiagnosed ADHD girls who became midlife women in burnout. And I'm like, well, fuck, I'm right there with you, ladies. Like, I am right there. And so it can be really tough to just sit down and be for a little while. That was a thing in Eat, Pray, Love when she's in Italy, and it's the art of doing nothing, the Italian art of doing nothing. And it was like, okay, so I keep reminding myself of that, right? We've just taken up residence in Europe. And so I'm really trying to shift my thought process to that. Like, rest is okay. It's okay if you're not busy. If you're tired, it's okay to take a nap, right? It's okay that you don't have to be busy all the time. So I joined a Facebook group. There's this group called the Lisbon Sisterhood, and they were talking about a book club. I was like, I'm in, right? So that is one of my goals with this move, is to not just take my American life to Europe and become a super driven on the go human being 24/7. Like, that's not how they live, right? But to adopt some of that, right? Like, things are closed on Sundays. It's a day of rest. I mean, there's no day of rest in America. It doesn't exist. So
Yeah.
trying to kind of find that balance. And I don't know that I'm going to be any good at it, but I'm going to give it a whirl.
Yeah. I mean, I love it. It's great. It's hard to do. I don't think any of us will say it's easy, but we deserve it, right? I don't know. There's so much around those like societal expectations and um yeah, how do you make it work?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully, you got something out of it. If you've got ideas or you found something, you've got a local group that you're like, oh, this is great. You absolutely need to check it out. Drop it in a comment, share it with us on one of our social media feeds or something. We'd love to hear your takes on it. I think we're all always looking for new ideas and new ways to find that better balance and really try to put ourselves maybe not first, but somewhere in the top 5. So if you enjoyed this episode, first, we hope you'll enjoy some of our other episodes. Go take a look and see what's out there, what's interesting. And second, please just take a moment to leave a review wherever you're listening. It's just really, unfortunately, these days, all about the algorithms and the reach and all of that. And reviews make a huge difference. The more interaction your podcast is getting on the different platforms, if there's reviews or comments or things like that, it just helps move it further up so other people see it. We would really appreciate that.
Yes, we would. Help us find more progressive homeschoolers. We all need community right now. It's a bit of a shit show in the world right now. So
Yep.
the more we can band together and find community and support, the better off we're going to survive this mess. And it's going to be okay. All right. So we typically end our episodes with a mantra. And so today's mantra is: your brain might be foggy and their attitude might be spicy, but you're both learning resilience. And that is an A+ in homeschooling life. So good luck with the perimenopause, menopause, postmenopause, puberty cyclone of hormones. You've got this, and happy homeschooling.
Yeah. Have a great one.